Canada's diplomatic trajectory is undergoing a substantial transformation, marking a decisive break from its long-standing reliance on the United States and a deliberate effort to foster deeper connections with Europe. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Mark Carney, this pivot is not a mere adjustment but a complete redirection in foreign policy. High-profile engagements with French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have sent a strong message to the global community. Canada is seeking to redefine its position on the world stage. This move raises critical questions about why Canada is realigning its focus toward Europe and what implications this could have for its traditionally close partnership with the U.S. The deep economic and strategic ties between Canada and the United States have formed one of the most stable alliances in the modern era. However, this relationship began to fray during the Trump administration when steep tariffs were imposed on Canadian exports, including steel, aluminum, and automotive parts. The economic impact on Canadian manufacturers was immediate and severe, with higher costs and reduced market access creating significant strain. The situation escalated further following Trump's re-election, as additional tariffs targeted Canadian goods, prompting Ottawa to reassess its heavy reliance on the American market. Prime Minister Mark Carney, with his extensive background in global finance as the former head of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, recognized the necessity of diversifying Canada's trade relationships. Viewing the crisis as an opportunity, Carney initiated a strategic shift toward Europe and Asia, aiming to reduce dependency on U.S. markets and broaden Canada's economic partnerships. This was not merely an economic decision but also a bold political statement. Carney's decision to prioritize visits to Paris and London over Washington underscored Canada's intent to establish itself as an independent player in global affairs. By signaling that Canada would no longer accept a subordinate role in its relationship with the U.S., Carney set the stage for a redefined North American power dynamic. On his first international trip as Prime Minister, Carney's meetings with Macron and Starmer were highly strategic. In Paris, discussions centered on strengthening trade and financial cooperation, with Macron proposing joint initiatives in defense, energy, and technology. These talks emphasized France's willingness to view Canada as an equal partner, breaking from the perception of Canada as an extension of U.S. influence. Similarly, Carney leveraged his existing relationships in London, positioning Canada as a valuable ally to the UK as it navigates post-Brexit challenges. Agreements to enhance bilateral trade and explore defense collaboration further signaled Canada's commitment to reducing its reliance on the United States. This realignment is not without risks. The U.S. could respond with retaliatory measures, such as imposing additional tariffs on Canadian exports, which would likely have a significant economic impact. However, Carney appears willing to accept these short-term challenges in pursuit of a more diversified and resilient trade portfolio. This strategy is designed to give Canada greater leverage in future negotiations with Washington while solidifying its economic ties with Europe and Asia. Beyond trade, defense has emerged as a critical area of divergence between Canada and the United States. One of the most contentious issues is the F-35 fighter jet program, in which Canada has invested billions of dollars. Reports of a rumored kill switch feature, which would allow the U.S. to disable the jets remotely during a conflict, have raised serious concerns about Canada's sovereignty and operational independence. In response, Carney's government is actively exploring alternatives with European defense contractors, including advanced fighter jets from German and French firms that do not come with the same restrictions. This move reflects a broader effort by Canada to assert control over its defense assets and reduce reliance on U.S. technology. While Washington has warned that exiting the F-35 program could isolate Canada from future NATO defense initiatives, Carney's administration remains firm in its commitment to safeguarding Canadian sovereignty. The Arctic has also become a flashpoint in Canada-US relations. As climate change accelerates the melting of ice caps, new trade routes and valuable natural resources are being revealed. While the U.S. views much of the Arctic as international waters, Canada has asserted its territorial claims and has bolstered its military presence in the region to reinforce these positions. Carney has sought support from European allies, including the UK, France, and Germany, to strengthen Canada's case under international law. This strategy not only enhances Canada's standing in Arctic geopolitics but also underscores its broader push for independence in both defense and diplomacy. However, these moves have not gone unnoticed by Washington, which has begun to retaliate economically. The U.S. has threatened new tariffs on Canadian goods, including agricultural products, automotive parts, and energy exports. Such measures could escalate tensions into a full-scale trade conflict. Anticipating these challenges, Carney's government has accelerated trade negotiations with the European Union and Asian markets, securing early agreements that aim to mitigate potential losses from reduced access to the U.S. market. While Canadian manufacturers and farmers may face immediate difficulties, the long-term goal of diversifying trade relationships promises greater economic stability and resilience. Mark Carney's leadership represents a bold departure from Canada's traditional foreign policy approach. By prioritizing partnerships with Europe and asserting greater control over defense and Arctic sovereignty, Canada is positioning itself as an independent and influential player on the global stage. However, this strategy carries significant risks, including the potential for strained relations with its largest trading partner, the United States. Whether Carney's gamble will ultimately pay off remains to be seen, but it is clear that Canada is determined to chart its own course, even in the face of formidable challenges.